It was really hard to narrow this list down, but today we are going to be talking about my top 10 books that I read in 2023. Hey guys, I'm Jessie, and yeah, like I said, today we are going to be talking about my 10-ish favorite books that I read in 2023. The first half of the year was a little iffy. I didn't read a whole lot. The second half of the year, I really got back into it, and I did read, I think, about like 52 books in the total of the year, which is always my goal, always what I aim for is a book a week. So I hit that, so I'm very excited, and I want to talk about my 10 favorite books. I say ish because I have one where it's like 3, but I'm counting it as 1, and you'll kind of see why. Okay, so without making this too long of a video, let's go ahead and jump into all of my favorite reads from 2023. First off, we have Seeds of War by Zhao F. Silva. This is a self-published high epic fantasy, and it might be my favorite book of the entire year. It was fantastic. I actually have a full spoiler-free review that I'll link for you, but to give you just kind of a little rundown, this is an epic fantasy that follows 3 different perspectives. We are following Red Now, who is like his old grizzled mercenary who has to do like one more job so he can pass on his mercenary group to his predecessor and just get out and be done. Then we also follow Grimlore, and she is a mom, war veteran, now kind of mob boss running this little town that she's trying to keep safe for her like family and her little group, and it is definitely something that is being looked at by those higher up. You know, she's trying to protect from invaders and things like that. And yeah, she is kind of a badass and just very like hardened, but also a mom. And then our other character is Obryasis. I think that's how you say it. And he is the savior of the world. He actually ended the last war with this like all-consuming god power that he has, but he does not know how he did it. He doesn't know how to control it, and he is basically a fraud. And just kind of using his notoriety to coast along in life, and he's got these like massive headaches that he can't explain. And it's really interesting because we get to see these 3 seemingly separate stories come together in this like really dark, gritty, epic fantasy that follows older protagonists. It also has like a really interesting magic system. It's a little bit of a traumatic magic system. Basically, you have to inhale this herb and it will either kill you or give you powers, but the powers themselves will actually kill you in the long run because you have to like smoke this herb basically in order to manifest your powers, and it kind of like it kills your lungs as it goes, but it kills like 90% of the population when they attempt it the first time anyway, so you're more likely to die than to gain the powers. And people are typically forced into that. They're not like, yo, let me do this. They're like forced into it. But honestly, this is such a unique and fun and cool self-published fantasy that I would recommend to everyone, and that is why it is one of my favorites of the year. All right, next up we have my one that I said, it's like taking up 1 slot in my top 10, but really it's 3 books, and that's because it was like my Sanderson reads, and we're just putting them all together. We're not going to talk too terribly much about them, but Tress of the Emerald Sea, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and The Last Metal. I read all of these. Obviously, I read the other secret projects this year as well. Y'all, just Sanderson. I mean, we've got the conclusion to Era 2 Mistborn, which absolutely blew me away. I loved it. It's very love-hate. I love Wayne. If you love Wayne, you'll love this one. And then, you know, the secret projects. Like, I had to include the secret projects, but it was really hard for me to pick between Yumi and Tress because I go back and forth because I adored both of these stories so much. We have, like, the gender-swapped Princess Bride retelling, and then we have the, like, heavily anime video game Final Fantasy inspired book, and I love them both, and all the cosmic connections, and That's why I'm like, this Sanderson is just taking up a slot because I've read a lot and I can't not show them some love. All right, next up we have The Hexologist by Josiah Bancroft. This is another one that I got off of NetGalley and ended up reading, and I absolutely loved it. This is a really fun, fast-paced, kind of like magical murder mystery, and I had the best time with it. We're following our two main characters, and they are a married couple. Probably like a, mid-30s, no kids, married couple, and they run this like investigation, private eye kind of business for like magical maladies. So they have somebody that comes to them, and it's, somebody that works for the king, and he's like, the king wants to bake himself into a pie. The king is going crazy. He literally wants to try to bake himself into like a pie or a cake. And he's also being blackmailed, which is the real reason that they're coming to him. Are coming to the Hexologist, because there's somebody out there saying that he is the illegitimate son of the king, and they have to basically figure out, like, is this person actually the illegitimate son? Is he not? And at first they didn't really want to take it because they're like, screw the king, like, we're not royalists. And they end up taking it on for reasons, but it is so good, and it goes down this like twisty, turny rabbit hole of, oh, this is the answer. Oh, no, it's not. Oh. And just trying to figure everything out. And then on top of that, we get this really great, like, married couple relationship. So we get to see that, like, they're just a happily married couple that love each other. Like, there's no relationship drama. There's no anything like that. They're just happy investigating these mysteries together. And we also have a talking dragon that likes food. What else do you need other than talking dragon that likes food? But really, this was such a fun book, and it is a series, so it is the first book in a series. I kind of thought it was going to be a standalone when I first read it, not gonna lie. But it ends where you figure out the answer to one mystery, but then you kind of get like another one layered in. So it answers all the core questions of the initial mystery you're given, and then some, and then it gives you more. And that is what's going to lead into, I believe, like the second book in the series. So this was definitely a good time. One of my favorite books of the year. Then we have The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarifi by S.A. Chakravorty. This is such a good book. This is, I think, the Fairy Loot edition, which is absolutely gorgeous. I also listened to this on audiobook, so I did like immersion reading on this one, and the audiobook narrator was fantastic. It really made it come to life. But in this book, we are following a, older mother. She's a 10-year-old daughter. She's, the other side of 40 is what she mentions within it. Former pirate captain who's kind of, put her past behind her and is trying to live a simple life. Protect her daughter, things like that, because she knows she's got enemies out there. And then one day, this old woman comes to her and tells her that she needs her help finding her granddaughter who's been kidnapped. And at first, Amina's like, absolutely not. Like, I don't do that anymore. Like, she even denies who she is. And this grandmother was like, look, finally, like, starts threatening her and is like, I know who you are. And I guess her son, at one point, was a member of Amina's crew, and something terrible happened to him. So, of course, she's, like, guilted into it. She's threatened into it. So she takes on this mission of finding this kidnapped girl. So she has to basically get the gang back together, which is one of my favorite tropes of all time. Right? Where it's like, we had the action, and we're getting the gang back together. It's not quite the, like, teenage hero saves the world and we see what happens 15, 20, whatever years later, which is definitely a favorite of mine. But we get, like, they're not young anymore. They've disbanded. They've done their thing. But now we have to get them all back together. Again, a common theme in a lot of my favorite stories. I think I might do an entire video on books with that kind of theming, because I've read a surprising amount and all of them have been fantastic lately. So let me know if that's something that you want. But yeah, she gets the crew back together and goes off to find this girl. And there is so much that happens. She is just this, like, badass female, but, like, she's older and she's a mom, so she also, like, complains about her aches and pains and, like, her neck and her back's not as good. And, you know, she reminisces on, like, old times and, you know, when she was young, and she talks about, like, her 5 husbands, and she's still, like, this fine, you know, badass, but also an older mother, which is things that I like to see, because it's like, you don't completely lose yourself in who you are when you become a mom. Like, you're still yourself. Like, I'm still Jessie, but it's very easy to get lost in I'm mom now and, like, I'm not that person I was. Like, you have to find that balance, and I like seeing that because it's not shown as much, like, especially in, like, fantasy books. It's like, no one wants to follow, like, the 30, 40-year-old mom. But I do. Like, I do. And surprisingly, it seems like a lot of people do. We get some really cool magic in this book. Of course, this is actually set in the same world as the Daevabad series, but 1,000 years beforehand. So you don't have to have read the Daevabad series, but if you have, you can notice, like, the little tie-ins and certain things, but obviously it happened 1,000 years before, so you're really not missing anything. But again, Daevabad is one of my favorite series. I do plan on doing a full standalone review for this book, so check that out when it comes. Moving on from Amina, we also have The Malevolent 7 by Sebastian de Castell. This is a awesome, gritty, dark fantasy book. And what got me was, in the description, it literally says that it is Terry Brooks meets Deadpool. So that right there. It's got a lot of dark humor. It's got a lot of, you know, the bad guys is who we follow, like the bad guys, but they remind you a lot that they're the bad guys, that they are not the good guys. But it's kind of cool because the bad guys might have better morals than the good guys. And there is some fourth wall breaking. So, like, I get that with the Deadpool. Like, it feels like there's, like, fourth wall breaking. Like, they're talking directly to you as an audience member, which is really fun. I like it when done well, and I think that, you know, De Castell did that really, really well in this book. So we are following this mercenary, and he's just a mercenary mage. Like, he is magic for hire, and, you know, warmongering for hire, and he ends up being hired to do this job to take down these, like, good guy mages, basically, who are, like, saving this town. And so he kind of gets his group together, and this group has already been predetermined, so it's, like, him and then somebody he's known forever and then new people. And so they get this group together, and the shenanigans begin. I mean, we have him, and then we have a, like, really homicidal, like, thunder mage. We have a rat mage who is, like, a debonair swashbuckler, and he is not a rat, but he's, like, can control rats. Because animal mages in this story can control a specific animal, and his just happens to be rats. But he is, like, a hopeless romantic and just hysterical. We have a young girl blood mage who's just coming into her powers. There is angels and demons and all kinds of chaos that just ensues. And the good guys might be bad and the bad guys might be good. And by the end of it, you're like, wait, what? The what is going on? But definitely pick this one up. It was so much fun. Very fast-paced, fun read. And yeah, if you like more of a morally gray kind of story, definitely pick this one up. All right, next up we have The Bone Shard War by Andrea Stewart. This is the conclusion to the Drowning Empire series. And I think it wrapped up the series so well. I loved this. I loved Bone Shard Daughter, I loved Bone Shard Emperor, and I loved Bone Shard War. I thought that this had such a great bittersweet ending. And if you know me, you know I love a bittersweet ending where it was not completely happy. Because, like, how are you going to be completely happy at the end of the war? Like, you're going to have casualties. You're going to have things happen. Like, shit's going to go wrong. Like, it can't be, like, everybody's happy kind of thing. But it was bittersweet, and I loved it. Like, all the revelations in this book, everything that happened, so much fun. I think I have a full review on, like, the entire series as a whole. And now is actually a really good time to read it because all the books are out. It is a completed series. So if you want to binge read, you know, the Drowning Empire, I keep on calling it Drowning Kingdoms. The Drowning Empire series, now is the time to do it. Because in the first book, we're following Len, who is the daughter to the Bone Shard King. And, like, they make these, like, weird constructs out of, like, a shard of bone that, like, everyone in the kingdom has to donate. But she has no memories past, like, 5 years prior. We're also following Jovis, who is, like, kind of a pirate mercenary who is trying to find what happened to his missing wife. And we are following the daughter of a governor who wants to do better, who's in love with an orphan and wants to do better, but doesn't really know how to not be, like, the daughter of a governor. And it's so good. There's talking animal companions. There's, like, cool elemental magic, as well as the really interesting Bone Shard magic. Twists and turns, and there's some romance, but it's not like a heavy romance, but I love the romance. Actually, there's more than one romance. It ended the series really, really well, so I would recommend it. Moving on from a last book in a series to the first book in a new series, and that is Song of Silver Flame Like Night by Emily Wenzel. That is the longest book name. Song of Silver Flame Like Night. I love the name, but it's very, very long. This is the Illumicrate edition, I believe. Oh my god, I love this. It's the first book in a YA duology. The second book actually just came out, and I picked it up and I haven't read it yet. But it is so good. And when I say YA, don't get thrown off. Because it's not like, oh my god, this is fantastic. And I do read YA. I read a lot of YA. I like YA. Sometimes it's fun. But it's not, I think this isn't what people would think of when they think of typical YA fantasy. There is romance, but it's not like the main jam. We're following this girl who has this, like, mysterious tattoo that nobody can see. And she is working at a tea house as, like, a performer, like a singer, basically. And this, like, colonized area of her country. So she's, you know, working there, but she's also trying to figure out why she has this, like, weird tattoo that no one can see on her arm. She doesn't know much about her parents. Like, her parents are dead. She's an orphan. And then one day, the people who are the colonizers, like, come in, and there's this, like, huge, like, uproar. Like, they're fighting, and they're trying to kill her. And this other guy just kind of shows up at the tea house and saves her. And she's like, what the F is going on? And he has magic, and she ends up figuring out that she has magic, and the colonizers have a different kind of magic, which is, like, metals, and, like, they use metals, and they, like, inject it into her, and it, like, can track her. And so her and this boy end up going to this, like, hidden monastery kind of area school where they train and save her. And basically, it sounds really weird, but it's very, like, Asian folklore inspired, and I love it so much. Like, these are some of my favorite books too. Like, anything that's, like, Japanese, Korean, or Chinese inspired fantasy, I end up devouring very quickly. Like, some of my favorite books are either Japanese, Chinese, or Korean inspired fantasy books. So take that as you will. But basically, yes, we get some really good character development. It is dual POV. We get some really cool magic with, like, demons and gods. Again, we love the demons and gods. And by the end of it, we don't really know. Are we rooting for the right people? Like, obviously we're rooting for the right people, but, like, it's like, they basically want to, like, bring back these demon gods in order to save themselves from the colonizing people, but, like, is that even really a good idea? Because, like, demon gods. So definitely going to be reading the second one, and this was one of my favorite books of 2023. I feel like I'm the worst at explaining books. I'm like, I liked it. Here's the vibes. Like, it was fine. Like, I feel like I'm really bad. Like, I forget the character names half the time, but I know I loved it. So sorry if this is rambly. And continuing on that kind of YA hype train, we've got Clockwork Princess. I read the last two books in this series, so Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess, at the beginning of the year. Look, I am not a Cassandra Clare girly. I'm not a Shadowhunter girly. Like, I did not like Mortal Instruments, like, at all. This series set me off. I love it. I love this series. The whole Infernal Devices. So I had to put it on this series because I love Jim. I love Will. And I like Tessa. Like, Tessa's okay, but it's like Will and Jim. They're the best. But I thought it ended the series really, really well. And then after this, I read After the Bridge, which if you have read this series and have not read After the Bridge, it's free online, like on Cassandra Clare's own website somewhere or on her Tumblr or something like that. Real short story. Go read it. Go read After the Bridge if you've read this and then haven't read the rest. I have, again, a full series review on this that I can link for you guys. Again, know that this is fantastic. I have continued on reading some of the other Shadowhunter books. I've liked them, but this one still remains my favorite. Okay. Then, a surprise favorite that I literally just finished not long ago is Assistant to the Villain. I had no expectations going into this. I know this is like a TikTok book, or like all the TikTok girls love it, the book talk girls. I am very, very rarely on book talk or TikTok or whatever. Like, I use TikTok for work because I'm a social media manager. Like, I'm the influencer manager for a company. But like, it has nothing to do with books. So I'm like very rarely on my own TikTok. So I didn't really know anything about this book other than it sounded really cool and it was available at my library on audio. And I picked it up. And I had so much fun. I loved it. After hearing that it was like a TikTok sensation though, I expected it to be spicy and it was not spicy. There's a romance that I loved. Okay? I loved the little romance in it. It is saccharine sweet and I love it. But it's not spicy. I did think it was going to be a little spicy, but it is not. But I think it's because every time I hear book talk fave, I'm like, it's smutty. Which honestly, I was kind of happy to see that it wasn't smutty, but whatever. We're following this girl who just basically really needs a job. And she's like saved by this guy called the Villain. And she's just, joking around nervous. And he's like, well, you can work for me. So he ends up hiring her to be his assistant at like Evil Villain Incorporated or whatever. And it's like hysterical because it's like an office job where she's like tasked with assisting him with his like paperwork. And there's other people in the office. And it's so funny. It is just absurd. And I loved it. It has its sweet moments, its serious moments. It does have some like darker backstory when you like figure out, why the villain is the villain. And, you learn things about the king who like everybody loves. And there's like this overarching mystery of like somebody within the office like betraying the villain and you never know who it is. And then you figure it out at the end. And I thought it was really great because I did not guess it. And like every thought I had was like, oh, it's that person. No, it's not. Oh, it's that person. No, it's not. Oh, it's that person. No, it's not. But it was so good. And I thought that this was just a fun, quick, romance-ish, just silly satire read. And it's actually going to be a series. So there's another book coming out and I will be reading it because I had a fun time. Sometimes you just want to have fun. It doesn't need to be dark and gritty and like high epic fantasy. Like this was just fun and I loved it. And the last one of my top 10 favorite books of 2023 is The Bonesmith by Nikki Palpretto. This came out this year and I had to read it like as soon as I got my hands on it because I loved her Crown of Feathers series. So I was really, really hopeful that I'd like this. And honestly, I think I might like this more than Crown of Feathers. It is still YA fantasy, but it does again feel like that more elevated YA fantasy, which I don't even know how. It's just on the older end of that age range. It's a big ass age range. It's on the older end of the YA fantasy age range. We're following our main character who is a bonesmith. And basically that means like she's kind of like a necromancer-esque, I think. It's like they can control bones and they can like put spirits to rest and stuff. And they have these like the hella white eyes and they do like the dark makeup underneath it. Like she looked really cool. So basically she ends up like kind of failing her like initiation test because she's betrayed by people. And so she is sent to this kind of outpost where she needs to basically like make up for it. And this is where she ends up meeting like one of the princes of the realms and befriends him. And then he ends up getting kidnapped. And one of the kidnappers ends up getting betrayed by the other kidnappers and saves basically the kidnapper. And then our main character end up having to go on a quest to find the prince that was kidnapped. And they end up having this like enemies to friends kind of relationship, and I love it. And we get to learn a whole lot about the realm and, you know, her family and the prince. And it's, again, one of those, it's got a lot of politics in it and some really interesting magic with the bones, and then as well with like iron. And it's just so good. Definitely excited for the next book. All right, and that is my top 10 favorite books that I read in 2023. Let me know what you thought of any of these books, if you've read any of them, if you're excited to read some of them, and if you plan on reading them, let me know when, because I want to talk to you about them. And if you also have read them already and love them, let me know. We'll have a chat. And then let me know what some of your favorite books from 2023 have been, because I would love to know, because, you know, I always need more books to read, because obviously I don't have enough. All right, well, thank you guys for hanging out. I'm Jessie, and I'll talk to you next time.